Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Today we're back here with Film Theory. Tonight we got ourselves another Disney kill count. So yeah, it's almost Disney's total kill count. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I think Matt Patter originally did this, but with more Disney movies, you know what that means. Everybody count. I'm curious what Lee's about to do with this, so let's just hop in and see what's going on. Be sure to like, subscribe for more. Hope you enjoy. Here we go.
Disney is deadlier than you think. Yeah, if you count up all of the deaths across their entire film canon, it's way higher than you expect. There's almost too many deaths to keep track of, but someone's got to do it.
Yep.
Hello Internet, welcome to Film Theory, the show that's been ruining your childhood for over 10 years. Yeah, in case you missed it, this June is the 10-year anniversary of Film Theory. We have something really cool planned for later in the year that we just couldn't quite get done in time, so keep your eye out for that. But in the meantime, I wanted to take a look back at one of the most popular videos we've ever done on the channel, our Disney Death Count series. Yeah, in case you haven't seen these, Matt and the team wanted to do a theory figuring out which Disney movie was the deadliest, and it turned into a much bigger project than they were expecting, spanning over an hour of content across 3 videos. They really killed it in that series, pun intended, and believe me, I know for a fact that it was a lot of work. And their conclusion? Disney's Dinosaur took home the most kills, with at least 300,005 deaths, mostly because of the lemurs killed on Lemur Island when it went up in flames. Honestly, I always thought that that was hilarious, because this is likely the only award that Disney's Dinosaur is ever going to get, but also, it made me wonder, surely that can't be right? Surely something else could win here, especially as more movies have come out and we've seen big films with big conflicts in them. We're talking Raya, Frozen 2, Strange World. Surely something can beat Dinosaur, and I want to see if that's the case. I'm actually curious now. But, well, here's the thing. Let me just say that I thought that this was going to be a fun, quick, simple video.
Yeah, let me guess.
No. The deaths in the new movies and do a part 4 to see if Dinosaur can be driven to extinction. But, well, you know how sometimes you go back and rewatch stuff and notice something completely new and different? Well, when the team and I jumped back in to watch all of the Disney movies for our Disney timeline theory last year, go check that out by the way, we noticed a lot of new stuff. Stuff that I know Matt didn't cover in the previous videos. So, yeah, a good portion of this video is going to be me pulling my best YouTube commenter impression, pushing up my glasses and saying, actually, just saying, if we're doing this, we're doing it right, we gotta be thorough. So, which Disney movie is actually the deadliest? Grab your popcorn and watch along, loyal theorists. This is gonna be a long one. So in case you don't...
Okay, so we're gonna see if there's a movie that beats 300,000 deaths. Which is a big number, so... And apparently there were some deaths that Matt missed the first time around. Man, this is gonna be a wild ride, I gotta say. The fact that Lee is tackling this himself too, oh boy. I'm actually really curious to see where this goes, so let's just hop in and see where things go. Alright, let's see if anyone beats the dinosaurs.
Don't remember, and I mean fair, it's been like 6 years since we did those old videos. Here are the rules we laid out for this challenge. Rule number 1, we're only counting deaths of sentient beings, because things get weird otherwise. Like, there are plenty of animals in the Disney canon, and they are not all created equally. Some rabbits are just rabbits, some dogs are just dogs, and yet, in other places, they are clearly thinking, feeling beings who can communicate those thoughts and feelings. So, for our purposes today, we're drawing the line here. If an animal can speak, or if they act as intentionally driven characters, they count for this theory. If they don't,
regular animals.
Oh, and just real quick, but for my science nerds out there, sentient might be the wrong word here. Sentient applies to the ability to experience feelings and sensations, while sapient refers to the ability to be conscious and self-aware, forming thoughts sapient. And okay, that makes sense. But that's word nerd stuff, so we're just gonna move on. Rule number 2, we will only count deaths that actually happen during the time frame of the movie. Nothing that happens before or after the runtime will count. And rule number 3, we will only count kills caused by the characters or events in the movies. This is mainly to avoid counting all of the people who should have died during the runtime of a movie outside of the events of the film from like natural causes. You know, just like regular people on the other side of the world dying from like old age or whatever. This also means that we have to exclude stuff like all of the people who would have died from the Noah's Ark sequence from Fantasia 2000, since the short only followed the living things that get on that boat. Well, except for the dragon, unicorn, and and Griffin all laughing up a storm, they definitely didn't survive. Oof, we'll need to add those 3 bozos to the tally. Also, a small but important one here. Rule number 4, we won't be counting any deaths that are undone. So if a character does die but is somehow revived through Disney magic, they're off the table. All that being said, we do need...
Okay, so basically, they gotta be sapient, they gotta happen during the film, and revives don't... A revival takes you off the list. Okay, so they gotta be permanent. At least that's how I see it. Remember, on screen, have to be sapient, they have to happen during the film, and the revives take you off the list. Okay, I actually kind of like those rules. Make it easier, you know? But now we got our rules. I'm actually kind of curious to see which one hits the list. Let's go.
We need to change one of the old rules slightly here. See, back during that original trilogy of theories, we didn't count the sequels or spin-offs to these movies. This was mostly so we wouldn't need to count or watch most of the old straight-to-DVD sequels like Cinderella 2 or The Lion King 1.5, or TV spin-offs like Aladdin and Tangled and the like. Basically, we wanted to avoid something really disappointing like Bambi 3 winning because of something stupid that happened in those movies. But this did end up taking 2 main Disney films out of contention, The Rescuers Down Under and Ralph Breaks the Internet. For the most part, this didn't really impact much of anything because there weren't a ton of these sequels from Disney's main studio, but from 2018 to 2027, half of the Disney film lineup is sequels. We're talking Frozen 2, Zootopia 2, Moana 2, Frozen 3, and with original movies like Raya and the Last Dragon, Strange World, and Wish bombing, we might just need to accept that sequels are going to be a big part of Disney's output moving forward. So as a compromise here, we're only going to be counting films made by Walt Disney Animation Studios. That's Disney's main animation company and covers what is known as the Disney canon. This will let us count all of Disney's main movies while ignoring all of those sequels and spin-offs that are of a much lower quality, thank God. So with all of that said, first things first, we need to double check all of the previous work because there are some corrections we have to make. We previously calculated that there were a total of 344,031 deaths throughout all of Disney's canon, but there are a few issues with that number. Mainly that the numbers that we add up don't actually add up to that number. Hey man, math's hard and we've all made typos. It happens. For example, at one point we mentioned that there were 41 deaths across all of the films we talked about in part 1, despite listing 54 specific deaths at that point. It's a small error, it happens, but I want to make sure that we get you the most accurate number possible here. So to make sure of that, we did what any good theorist would. We made a spreadsheet. So what exactly do we need to clarify here? Well, first up, we mistakenly counted Marshmallow's death in Frozen, but totally overlooked the after-credits scene where Marshmallow is shown alive and well. He also shows up in Frozen 2 just to further bring that point home. So we're gonna have to subtract one death from that previous total, going from 33 to 32. We're also going to throw in those 3 laughing mythological creatures from Fantasia 2000 that I mentioned earlier, since they did not have the last laugh when the flood came. Last year's Moana 2 also showed that the Kakamora survived their skirmish with Moana and Maui, and we know that these are the same Kakamora because they have the same leader. So we'll need to subtract 260 deaths there too. In Treasure Planet, we thought that all of the patrons in the destroyed inn from the beginning were also part of the body count, but most of them then showed up again in the last few minutes of the movie, so we're gonna assume that all of them survived, bringing that total to just 1,008. And in Brother...
Yeah, honestly, I think with that inn scene, that was a little off, because I think they were closed at the time. Like, I'm not sure how often taverns are open at late, but let's be real. I'm pretty sure they would have left because, I mean, they were pretty much wiping down the bar, so it was pretty much way past last call. So pretty sure none of the patrons got caught up in that fire, so they were fine. I mean, I'm pretty sure we would have seen them scrambling if they were in that inn, now I think about it. I mean, to be fair, I haven't seen Treasure Planet back at the time, so I don't remember it. Hey, back to Brother Bear.
We had no issue counting up the amount of fish eaten, but somehow forgot to count the main character's brother and Coda's mama bear. Oops. Just to show that we really dotted our I's and crossed all of our T's here, I want to mention all of the big movies that we didn't call out last time. First up, the Aristocats, Bolt, Lilo and Stitch, the original Fantasia, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, and Meet the Robinsons all have 0 deaths in them. And just to nip this in the bud, Ichabod's fate is a bit ambiguous, but we don't see a body, so we're not going to count that in there. As for low death movies, well, there's Beauty and the Beast, which sees
Bye-bye.
Gaston fall to his death. The thief Jafar sends into the Cave of Wonders, and Aladdin also bites it, or I guess
Just
bitten.
got eaten.
Pokuum gets shot in Pocahontas,
Ooh,
Tadashi gets blown up in Big Hero 6, and Cinderella's father passes away at the very start of that film. Todd's mother from The Fox and the Hound gets shot off screen Bambi's mother style, while the bear takes a nasty tumble that likely kills him. Woodland animals are sapient in this movie, so both of those count. This movie also gets the award for the saddest letting a pet go for its own good scene in literally any movie I've ever seen. I cry every time, man. Though we briefly mentioned Melody Time in our very first video and how Little Toot caused a pretty nasty accident when he crashed a ship into New York City, that actually didn't cause any deaths. If it had, the flags we see later in the movie would have been at half-mast to mourn the loss of life. But there were other deaths that we didn't count, including Johnny Appleseed, who passes away from old age, and Pecos Bill's girlfriend, who gets blasted to the moon. So that's two right there. I was also a bit surprised that we glossed over The Black Cauldron in our previous videos because it's widely seen as Disney's darkest movie. Surely it has a ton of kills, right? Well, not so. Yeah, it has a lot of dead things,
undead,
but not a whole lot actually
again, I don't think those count. Remember, sapient.
The movie. The army of the dead do take out 2 randos, and the Horned King falls victim to the Cauldron's power, but that's about it. Gollum ripoff Gurgi does die in the Cauldron too, but comes
remember,
back to life at
revivals
the very end
don't
of the
count.
movie. So the Black Cauldron only adds 3 to the total tally. Now here's where I think the death count is really gonna surprise you. The Princess and the Frog. Yeah, what might seem like a pretty light-hearted princess fare on the outside is actually a pretty dark story when you really break it down.
True, I mean,
like
we are talking about voodoo.
The Firefly gets crushed by Dr. Facilier. That crunching sound is just so nasty. Hey man, at least Ray gets turned into a star in the afterlife. Dr. Facilier also meets his own terrible fate when the voodoo forces come to collect what they're owed. And we're gonna count his death as 2 deaths though, because his shadow appears to be an independent sapient being that shares the villain's fate. And since we're counting living shadows, we gotta add the 4 shadow creatures that Mama Odie vanquishes, and then the 4 that Ray takes out, bringing this film's total to 11.
The numbers all go to 11.
The Emperor's New Groove is also surprisingly deadly when you sit and think about it. How so? Well, first off, there are 6 guards that get turned into animals by Yzma's potions, 5 of which met their untimely end when they jumped down a drain in pursuit of Cusco and Pacha.
Come on, man! Nobody lives forever!
Oh, that's a regret. Bye-bye!
I think the one guard that asked to go home made the right choice here. As for the 6th death, well, there's a bug that gets eaten by a spider earlier in the movie. Now you might be thinking, hold up, that's just a bug, but remember our rules here. We're counting sentient beings who can feel and communicate, and listen to this. The bug calls out for help. Also, side note really quick, but the only animals we see speak in this movie have been transformed by Yzma's potions, so I think that this poor insect might be one of Yzma's victims. And then there's Tarzan, which starts stacking these bodies early on in the runtime. Like literally the first scene that shows a ship burning and sinking at the same time. For a ship of this type, the crew probably would have been about 30 people, which is an interesting coincidence because it's also the same number that was on the ship carrying the frozen parents. Anyway, but we can't count these based on our rules. Yeah, by the time the movie actually starts, everyone else on board appears to already be dead, since Tarzan and his family are escaping alone and not trying to help anyone else at all. So yeah, if Tarzan had started just 20 minutes earlier, we'd have a lot more deaths to log, but these casualties aren't technically in the runtime, so we can't. But cheer up, because there are still more to cover. The leopard Sabor kills Kerchak and Kala's baby gorilla and Tarzan's parents. Tarzan kills Sabor, Clayton kills Kerchak, and then hangs himself in what might be one of the most brutal Disney deaths ever. And this movie was not playing around, also with 6 kills total. So that brings the accurate death count from the prior 3 episodes of this series to 345,115, just based on all the films we've assigned concrete numbers to.
Okay, so not too bad.
Man, I can see why Matt always said that this series of episodes was so complicated to research, but I still think that we can find something that will beat Dinosaur. So let's hop into the new movies and see what we got. First up, Wish, which had 0 kills, except for the movie's chances at the box office. Oh, and since we're now counting sequels, let's also get this one out of the way really quick.
Rescuers Down Under.
We see 1 death with the poacher that gets poached in The Rescuers Down Under. We also see the pilot in Strange World get killed, but he's the only one in that movie. And in Kanto, there's a flashback of Mirabel's grandfather getting killed. This movie also has Casa Madrigal getting destroyed, which is indeed a sentient being and part of the Madrigal family, but the town then put it back together in the final sequence, bringing the house back to life. So only 1 death there too. Next up, and the most recent movie so far,
Moana 2.
Yeah, this movie caused us to go back and change all of the Kakamora deaths from the first movie, significantly reducing the number of kills in that film. But what about the new deaths in this movie?
Well,
we see the deaths of Moana's ancestor and his crew in a flashback, and
Three.
Moana herself also dies, but then comes
revives.
back as a demigod, so that doesn't
three.
count. All in all, that just adds another 3 deaths here. Oh, okay. So what about Raya
Raja,
and the
yep.
Last Dragon? I actually have a lot of hope for this one to have a huge death count, which is an incredibly
harsh,
thing to
but
say out
dark.
loud, but regardless, think about it.
I mean, I was about to say, you really want to beat dinosaurs, don't you? Which, I mean, fair, but something tells me those dragons are coming back. Like, what we've seen, I don't think that's technically death, more petrification. Not sure if they're coming alive, but, well, we're about to find out.
If you didn't end up seeing this one, and you probably didn't considering the box office on this one, man, COVID was brutal. The conflict in Raya centered around an evil force known as the Droon terrorizing the land of Kumandra. They petrify every living creature they touch, human, dragon, or otherwise, into stone. And we see a ton of people get stonified here while there's a bunch of fighting in between. Surely there's a ton of death and destruction here, right? Well, not so. See, at the end of the movie, all of the stone transformations are reversed, basically unkilling everybody that the Droon killed. Even all of the dragons that have been stoned for centuries are released. So, despite all of its violent battles, this dragon movie turned out to be quite toothless, with 0 deaths. Okay, I'm getting a little nervous that nothing's gonna rival Dinosaur here. Maybe we can find some hope in Frozen 2? I mean, a violent battle broke out between Arendelle and Northuldra, right? Well, sure, but the forces of nature intervened right away to shut that fighting down, but not before these 2 guys take a tumble off the side of a cliff. I'm also gonna say that the right-hand man of Elsa and Anna's grandfather also died in this battle, because if he'd survived, he could have told someone about the grandfather's evil scheme and that the dam he built was the reason that nature sealed off the forest. Elsa also briefly dies, taking Olaf, Marshmallow, and all of her other creations with her, but this is temporary, and they're all brought back by the post-credits scene, which we did watch this time. So, that's just 3 total for Frozen 2. Man, so far, most of these films had a smaller death count than I was expecting, especially with Raya. I thought for sure we'd have something to rival Dinosaur, and, well, there is one movie that does rival it. It actually completely overshadows it, believe it or not. Yeah, the deadliest movie Disney's ever released. Drumroll, please. Ralph Breaks the Internet? Wait, really? Yeah, I know. I was surprised too, but
this I gotta hear.
So, how does this one possibly rack up so many deaths? Well, it's all thanks to this right here.
Whoa.
Yeah, during the course of this movie, Ralph is cloned several times, with the group becoming a literal embodiment of Ralph's insecurities that rampages through the web. But wait, are we really going to be counting clones for this here? For real?
I mean, they're technically sapiens, so I
but
think
the
that
answer
counts.
is yes. When you really look at it, they fulfill all of the criteria we laid out for them to be sentient or sapient. They have thoughts and feelings. They can communicate and understand things. And, in fact, when the Ralphs combine into their giant Ralphzilla form, the protagonists are only able to stop it by talking things out, appealing to their humanity, their sentience. They check all of the boxes to count, so if you have a problem with this, don't take it up with me. I didn't make the rules. Anyway, Ralph is ultimately able to calm his clones down, telling them that everything will be okay and convincing them to let go of their insecurities. However, because each of these clones are made up entirely of Ralph's insecurities, by letting them go, they fade away. In the movie itself, this represents Ralph's emotional issues being resolved, but for our purposes today, oh my god, they're all dead! They literally disappear out of existence because they let go of the only thing keeping them together, and that's surprisingly dark when you really sit down and think about it. But okay, down to brass tacks.
How many clones?
The real question here is exactly how many Ralph clones make up Ralphzilla here? Well, at first I hoped that we might be able to do some math to figure it out. After all, Ralph's canon height is 9 feet tall, so we could theoretically do some picture measurements here to get a rough estimate. But fortunately for us, we don't have to. In fact, we have an official number. In an interview, the film's effects lead explained just how many Ralphs they needed to make up Ralphzilla, and said that it took 550,000 Ralphs. Yeah, 550,000. That means that when they all faded away, we have to add another 550,000 deaths to our total tally. And believe it or not, that single-handedly makes Ralph Breaks the Internet the deadliest Disney film, knocking Dinosaur off the only pedestal it's ever been put on. So with all of that in mind, tallying all of these deaths together, Disney's total death count now sits at, another drumroll please, 895,123. Almost 900,000 souls lost for our entertainment at the happiest place on earth. And I gotta say, something that really stuck out to me while rewatching all of these movies, despite Disney cranking out movies for nearly 90 years, it seems like 99% of the deaths all came from movies that came out in the last 30 years or so. Why? Well, the scope of Disney's films just continue to grow and grow. Gone are the days where a simple fairy tale would suffice. A princess in the woods hanging out with talking animals and tricking evil witches and all of that stuff. Now we're seeing gods fight titans, civilizations sink, the entire internet being put at risk, and things are only going to be getting bigger and bigger. Honestly, it's a question of when, not if, Disney's death count is going to top 1 million, and you best believe that we'll be here to count it.
Maybe we'll see it in Zootopia.
But until then, remember that it's all just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film.
Yeah, honestly, I could see that, but who knows? I actually have to look back at Zootopia 2. I mean, I guess we're having a terrorist angle from that screenshot, but who knows? I'm curious what's going to happen, but well, I guess we'll have to wait and see how many people die in that film to see if they help break it. But then again, we're going to see a lot of big body counts. Who knows? Well, till next time. See ya.